What up, YouTube? It's your boy Vesty Vest. I'm back at it again, and today I wanted to do the second part to the shortcuts to my arithmetic reasoning part that I did before. So without much ado, let's jump right into it. So the first question here asks, Mary has an appointment in 50 minutes. It is now 3:50 p.m. When is Mary's appointment? So in 50 minutes, we can underline this. It is now 3:50. So, in time, we can add this 50 to this, and so we take 10 out of 50. That leaves us 40. We add 10 to this. That puts us at 4, and then the 40 that's left. It'll be 440 at the time of Mary's appointment. So this will be C. Number 2 says Siri earned 520 last week. Her pay is based on 6% commission of all sales. What were Siri's total sales last week? Okay. So this $520 here, her pay is based on 6% commission. So I will assume, well, it's not even an assumption at this point. I will take that this 520 is 6% of the total, I guess, salary or total sales. So in this case, we could just look for which of these values. This is where common sense really comes into play. For which of these values is 6% gonna, I guess, approximate to 520? We can definitely eliminate $30. 31, 60, 86. We can also eliminate that. And then here, we know the answer is between this and this. Where really common sense and reasoning comes into play is we know that 10% of 3,120 is 300 and what 312. So if this is 10%, then this value, which is 10%, is already lower than the 520 that we're looking for. So we know it can't be C. So the answer has to be D. So this is just purely reasoning. You don't even have to do the math. Marty has 16 pencils and 4 times as many erasers. How many more erasers than pencils does Marty have? So if Marty has 4 times as many erasers, then we could just take the 4 and multiply by 16. And when we do that, we should get about 64. So we get 64. But the question is asking how many more erasers than pencils does Marty have? And so we have to subtract the pencils, which is 16, from the erasers, right? So when we do that, we should get about 48. So the answer should be C for this one. And then we get to number 4. It says last week Craig ran the race in 13 minutes, I guess 40 seconds. And then this week he ran it in 12 minutes. Let me see what this would be. 12 minutes, 12 minutes. I guess that would probably run out to about. But how many seconds did his time improve? How many seconds does it? Well, what we need to do for this one is just convert all of these into seconds, right? I think that'll make this question much simpler. So we have improper fractions. We want to convert them to fractions. And so the way we do that is for the 13, we take this 13, multiply it by 3, and then add 2. So 13 times 3 gives us 39 plus 2. Okay, let's see. Actually, give me a second. No. The way we do this, so let me write these two here. I think it'll make it much more clear. So we have 13 and then 2/3. Then we have 12. And then we have 5/12, right? and we want to convert this into improper fractions. Well, I mean, this is minutes, but we want to convert it into seconds. And so we take the 13 and multiply it by 60 to get 60 seconds, right? I mean, to get the, in seconds. Once we do that, we know that the 2/3 comes out to about 40 seconds, right? So we add 40 seconds to the whatever we got when we multiplied the 13 by 60. 13 multiplied by 60 is 780. And so we add 40 to that, and we get 820. So that's 820 in seconds. And then we take the 12. We want to convert all of this into seconds, right? And so we take the 12, multiply it by 60. So 12 times 60 gives us about 720. And then we see what the 512 is in seconds, right? So one thing we could do if we don't know is we could just divide the 512. 512 gives us about 0.416666. We multiply that by 60 seconds, and that should give us that gives us about 25. And so we add 25 to the 720 that we got when we multiplied that 12 by we multiplied the 12 by 60, which was 720. So plus 25, and that gives us 745. And now we could do the subtraction. So 820 minus 745, and that gives us 75. And so converted into seconds, this is what we should get. Put an equal sign here, and the answer should be B. Okay, so Trey can tie 45 knots in 8 minutes. At this rate, how long will it take him to tie 60 knots? So one thing we could do is we could take the 45 just to see the rate, right, at which these knots are being tied. And so we could take the 45 divided by 8, and that should give us about 5, 6. So yeah, this is the rate. Now we want to figure out. It says at this rate, how long will it take him to tie 60 knots? So at this rate, well, essentially what is being asked is when we at this rate, if we're looking at 60 knots, so what number of these options can we divide by 60 to give us the same value that we have up there, the 5.625, right? We know when we divide 60 by 10, we're going to get 6. And so this can't be the answer, right? And so we can eliminate the fractions now, because dividing by fractional numbers or can be hard. And so let's focus on the two whole numbers first and see if we can use some reasoning to actually get the answer without dividing by a fraction. Okay, so, and then we know 60 divided by 12 is 5, right? So we know the value that we're looking for is 5.6. And when we divided 60 by 10, we got 6. When we divided 60 by 12, we got 5, right? So that puts us, the value that's in the middle of 5 and 6, which is this value here, right? It has to be this number, because that value is between 5 and 6. And so we can use that reasoning to pick B as our answer for this one. And then number 6 is that security answered 5 calls between 5 and 6. So 5 and 6, we have 5 calls. And then between 6 and 7, there was no call. Between 6 and 7, there's no call. So we could put 0 here. And then between, it says 8 and between 7 and 8, there are 8 calls. And 8 calls between 8 and 9. Okay, actually, give me a second. And no calls between No calls between 7 and 8. Okay, actually, here, give me a second. Yeah, I think I might have messed myself up. Security answered 5 calls between 5 and 6. Okay, good. 3 calls. Okay, so I guess this is the mistake I made. So there should have been 3. There should have been 0, actually. And then finally, we have 8 to 9. And then 8 calls between, okay, 7 and 8, and 8 calls. Okay, and 8 calls between. Okay, 8 calls between 8 and 9. So essentially, we look at how many hours that we have here, and then it says what was the average number of calls answered during this time. So what we should do is add all the number of calls up, and that should give us what 5 plus 3 is 8, and then 8 plus 8 should give us 16. And then however long the whole calls were, we started at 5, we ended at 9, so we could just subtract 5 from 9, and that should give us 4. So now we take the 16. To get the average, we just take the 16 total calls that we picked and divide it by however long time that we used doing this. And so we got 4. 4 divided by 16 should be 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. And so the answer for this one should be A. And then we move on to number 7. Number 7 says a recliner originally priced at $900 was discounted 30%. Since it didn't sell, it was reduced another 20%. What is the total percent of discount? And so we take the $900, and we do. It was discounted, right, at 30%. So we take 30% out of this. We get, and typically the way I do these, I mean, if to do this in your head, right, you could do 10% of roughly 10% of 900 would be. Let me put percent here so we don't confuse ourselves. That would be 90, right? I mean, you just move the decimal. Imagine the decimal here. The decimal was there. You move it to the left one time, and that should give you 10%. So you get 10%. And once you know 10%, if you want to get 30%, you could just take the value that you got as 10% and multiply it by 3. So you multiply 90 by 3, you should get 270. And so we subtract that from 900. And that brings us about the remaining, would be 630. And then it says another 20%. So since it didn't sell, it was reduced another 20%. So now we take 20% out of this, right? Again, I mean, this is the same. You could use the same trick. You put a decimal here. You move it to the left one time. You get 63. So that'll be 10% of this remaining 630, right? And then if we want to get 20%, you would just multiply this by 2, right? And 63 times 2 gives us 126, right? So now initially we had the 270, and now we got 126, and so we can add these two together. And we get 6, we get 9, and we get 3. All right. And it says, what is the question? What is the total percent of discount? Total percent of discount. So this is the whole total percent of discount, right? We know, looking at 900, that 396 is not exactly half of it. So we know it cannot be 50. We also know that it's, the 396 is less. I mean, it's half of 900 would be 450, right? It'll be 450, and so we know that the answer has to be between 44 and 48. We can know that, I mean, this thing hasn't even crossed 400 yet, so there's no way this is going to be 48. So it has to definitely, by reasoning, it has to be 44. But if we really wanted to find out and do the math, we could just, do that 396 divided by 900, and that should give you exactly 44. So you could do the long division or whatever you want to do for this one. But you do that division, it should get about 44. Okay, so a circular swimming pool 5 feet high has a volume which is 125 pi cubic feet. What is the distance across the widest part of the pool? So essentially what they're asking is, what is the diameter of this pool? And so we could draw something out like this. Typically these ones, it helps just to draw something. So let's assume this is our pool. They're telling us that, the volume is 125 pi cubic feet, right? And so typically the way these works, this almost looks like a cylinder to me, what I've drawn. And the way we find the volume of cylinders would just be, I think it's just pi r squared times height times the height, right? They've already given us the height. They said that this height was 5. And so we take the 5. I mean, essentially what we need to solve for is the radius. And so if we plug in, they've given us the answer. They said 125 pi. So 125 pi is equal to, we can set this as equal to pi r squared times 5, right? 5, replacing the h for 5, since they already told us right here that this pool is 5 feet. And so now we can solve this for pi. And so we divide the 5 on the right side by the 5 here, and we should get 25. 125 divided by 5 should give us 25. And then we can also cancel out the pi. So you got 5 pi's on left and right side, so we can cancel that out. So now we have simplified. We have 25 is equal to r squared, right? So now we could just take square root right side, square root left side, and that should give us r is equal to 5. So that's our radius. But mind you, radius is only to any point from the center of our circle to any point on the circle. So that's just halfway. But the question is asking us the widest part of the pool, and so that means we need to carry this out all the way through. And so which means that if the radius or half of this is 5, then we have to add another 5, right, from the center to the other side. And so we do that, we should get about 10. And so the answer for this should be 10. And then the next question, it says Mrs. Lannis plans to put flowers in her yard except in each corner as shown. What area of her yard remains for flowers? So looking at the shape, it almost looks to me as though this is a rectangle. We add these two sides together, we should get about 4. We add these two sides together, we should get about 6, right? So that's what we get. So the whole area of this shape should give us about 24. 6 times 4 should give us 24. So I'll put A just like 6 times 4. 6 times 4, which should give us 24. So that's the whole area. Now, if you look closely, you see that these sides, so for instance, if we divided this by 4, right, it looks like the shaded regions make up half of all these sides. And so to get, it says what area of her yard remains for the flowers. It looked like there'll only be half remaining for the flowers. And so if we know that the whole area of this shape is 24, then half of it should be 12. So that should be our answer. Number 10, it says a check register shows $512.33. Beginning balance, a deposit of $120.30. So we've deposited this. We started with 512.33, and then we deposited. So the 120 here is added, 120. And then we withdrew $35. We withdrew $60. And then we deposited $21.84. And they want to know, okay, give me a second. And another withdrawal. So there was another withdrawal here, which is $36.89. What is the ending balance? I mean, in a test setting, if you really want to, speed through this, you could just add up all the negative, all the withdrawals, right? So the 35 plus 60, you should get about 95. You should get about 95. Then you add that 89. That should give you about negative 131.89, right? So negative 131.89. You could subtract, and then you can add for this one. I'll probably let's ignore the 512 for now. I'll add these two, right? So 120 30 plus 21.84. That gives us about 142.14. So we could do the subtraction for this one, right? Where you do 131.89, and that gives us what, 1025. So there's a positive of 1025, which means we can add this value back to the initial value we had in the account before we did the deposits and withdrawals. We do that, we should get about 522 point something, right? And so the answer should in this case be B. Okay, number 11. Carlos takes out a loan of $600 that charges an annual interest rate of 15%. If he pays the loan in monthly installments over a 1-year period, what will his payment be? Okay, so over a 1-year period. Okay, so after 1 year, there will be an interest added on to this, right? So what we could do is get, what is 10% of 600? We know it would be 60. And then 5%. Well, if this is 10%, then to get 5%, we could just divide this 60 by 2, and that should give us 30. And so if we're trying to get 15%, that'd just be 60 plus 30, which should be 90. Right? That gives us 90. We add this 90 to the 600, so that we know that after the year, the interest has been added on. So we do that, we get 690. But it did say that there was going to be, it says if he pays the loan in monthly installments, right? So meaning that this 690, we need to divide by 12 to know what the monthly installments will be. So we divide this by 12, we should get about 57.50. So this represents what the monthly installments will be. So the answer for this one should be C. Number 12 says Danielle is decorating a package with ribbons. If she cuts a 5-foot piece of ribbon into 4-inch pieces, how many smaller ribbons are there? So we take the 5 foot. Right, we know we need to convert this into inches, since she wants to see how many pieces of ribbon will be if she, I guess, if she cuts it into 4-inch pieces, right? So we need to convert this into inches. Well, we know that there are 12 inches in a foot. And so we just take the 5 feet that we got and multiply it by 12 to convert it into inches, right? And we know that 12 times 5 is 60. So now we need to divide this 60 because it says if she cuts the 5-foot pieces of ribbons into 4 inches, into 4-inch pieces, right? So 4-inch pieces, meaning that we need to divide this by 4. How many ribbons are there? So you divide 60 by 4, you should get about 15. Or you should get exactly 15. Number 13 says admission to a museum cost $15.50 per adult and $8.75 per child. What is the cost for a family of 2 adults and 4 children? So we just do 2A plus 4C is equal to what, right? The C stands for children. The A stands for adult. So we could just do 2 times 15. 1550 plus 4 times 875. And we do all this. We know 2 times this. 15 times 2 would be like 30. And then there's this 50 here. So if you're doing that, you should get about 31. And then you do the 4 times 8. 4 times 8 would be 32. And then 4 times 75. I mean, that's 75. Let me see. That should be about 3. So we got, well, let me see. So 32 plus 3 will be 35. So we add these two together and we should get, we should get 66. Number 14 says you have 7 quarters. How many more quarters are needed to fill a $10 quarter wrapper? Okay, so we already have 7 quarters. We want to fill a $10 quarter wrapper, right? So we just need to convert the $10 all into quarters, right? So for every dollar, we know there are 4 quarters. And so we take this 10 and multiply it by 4, right? And that should give us exactly 40. We already have 7 quarters, and so we subtract this, so it'd be 40 minus 7, the 7 quarters that we already have, and this should give us about 33. So that's how many quarters would be needed to fill the $10 quarter wrapper, and so the answer should be D. And then for this one, number 15, it says a cardboard square measuring 10 inches on each side is to be cut from a box. Okay, if 2-inch squares are cut from each corner and the sides are then folded upwards, what is the volume of the resultant box? Okay, so we take a look at this. We know the sides here, they say this is a square, right? And so we cut out this 2-inch, another 2-inch here we cut out. That leaves us, because this is 10, that'll leave us 6 here, and so all these sides would be 6. This would be 6, this would be 6, and this would be 6, right? The 2-inch sides that we cut out, now that'll be the height. And so if you want to get the volume, typically we solve for volume as length times width times height, right? The height in this case is going to be the 2 inches that we cut out. Because the base is going to be a square, I mean, the width is going to be 6. The length is also going to be 6. So we multiply all this through. We get 6 times 6, which is 36, times 2, which would be 72. And the answer should be B for number 15. And it looks like that's about it. So there are 15 questions for this one. Let's check our answers, though, to make sure that we did everything correctly. So number 1, the answer is C here, as you can see. Number 2, the answer is D. Number 3, the answer is C. Number 4, the answer is B. Number 5, let's go right here. Number 5, the answer is B. Number 6, the answer is A. Number 7, the answer is D. Number 11, the answer is, give me a second, I think I might have skipped. So we went from number 7 to 11. Number 8, the answer is B. Number 9, the answer is C. Number 10, the answer is B. And then finally 11. 11, the answer is C. Okay. And then moving on, number 12, the answer is B. Number 13, the answer is B. Number 14, the answer is D. Number 15, the answer is B. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of these, you know, some of these you don't even need to work out, you know, exactly. You could kind of use some reasoning to kind of pinpoint what the answer is without even doing it. Like, for instance, you know, these fractional divisions here for number 5, we didn't, as I showed you, we didn't really need to divide, you know, the 60 by 10 and 2/3 or 12 and, you know, a half. And yeah. And then for number 2 also, we kind of also use some reasoning to also pinpoint that D was the answer without actually, you know, doing the tedious math. So a lot of these you can avoid the tedious math by just using some basic math reasoning. And I hope you enjoyed this. And if you really did, you know, do make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what else you need me to do. The next video that I'm gonna upload will probably have to do with dealing with fractions. You know, how to add fractions, how to maybe multiply fractions, how to deal with fractions in the in the arithmetic reasoning part of the ASVABs. And so be on the lookout for that. And until next time, see ya.